So here we are in Grand Rapids. It is the day that the big release of the film, The Forest, and we're going to be talking a little bit about trail cameras and talk to Kevin and Jorden about the project and their endeavors throughout the year in filming this project and bringing it to light. So for everyone who doesn't know you guys, who are you and what do you do for a living, and how many cameras do you run?
You want to start?
Yeah, so I'm Jorden Susewitz. I'm a full-time freelance videographer and photographer now. Own my own company, do a little bit of marketing for another company as well to kind of fill in the gaps. How many trail cameras I run? Because I'm a full-time videographer and photographer, I don't get time at all for myself to hunt. So,
Yep.
But the cameras I do have are Exodus. So, the last couple of years I just haven't had time.
You bought glass for your cameras instead of buying
Yeah,
cameras.
no doubt. It's but actually probably 3 years ago.
I was gonna say you've been a customer close to since day one.
Yeah,
it's been.
I bought my first camera at this show from you.
So that would have been 20.
Is that 2 years ago?
16?
3 years ago?
It might have been your first time here because it was back when ATA was back in Louisville, so it was 3 years ago then.
Wow.
I think that was 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. So that camera's still running strong. I know that.
Right on,
Yeah.
brother.
Was that the original lift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then my buddy, he's bought in multiples because he hunts more than I do. So he's got like 3 or 4 of the cameras now.
Cool.
So
Coincidentally, I think that'd be the same year that I.
We
I remember
first
seeing
met
you
you
in
in
Lansing.
Lansing.
Yeah.
But that would have been the same year.
Would have been?
That would have been the same year. Yeah.
Yep.
Michigan, man. The plug. These shows, you just don't know who you're going to run into.
right.
A year later,
Yeah.
2 years later, yeah.
We saw a lot of cameras in Michigan.
There's a lot of deer hunters. in
Well,
Michigan.
yeah.
We were well aware.
Yeah.
What about you, Kevin? What's your life like?
So, yeah, I am full-time, my professional career as a plumber. And I host a podcast and a website. And this year, we took on, jointly, Jorden and I talked about 14 months ago when it started. And it oddly enough, it started through you guys. So you had met him at a show, and then through, Film the Hunt maybe or something? You and Matt
Tom and Nick, yep.
Yeah.
had connected. And when you opened the business Blue Collar Clothing with your partner up there in Mayo, you made a post about it on Facebook. And I'm like, somebody's opening a business in Mayo, Michigan?
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked at their website and everything. I'm like, oh, man, this looks like top tier, like really cool. Like, I'm going to reach out to these guys. And just because my family's always had a place in Mayo. We had a lot of tradition up there. I thought it was super cool that some younger people were opening a business there. So I reached up to him and just said, hey, love to get you guys on the podcast and talk about what you're doing. And we just, from there, started conversing. And then I started to see some of the work that he was putting out. I'm like, man, this is like great content. Guy's talented, right?
Super talented.
And I had aspirations to do like a film and capture like the tradition of deer hunting in northern Michigan. And I reached out to him one day. I was at work doing something I didn't want to be doing, thinking about what I did want to be doing. And I made a phone call to him and said, hey, this is just my thoughts. What do you think about it? And he's like, yeah, that would be really cool. And we just started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And, a year later, we have a 46-minute start-to-finish film documentation of our entire season that about 250 people are coming out tonight to put butts in the seats and sit down and enjoy the evening and watch it with us. So it's crazy how things work out. I mean, I met you guys through a show and met him through that connection, and it's crazy from start to finish to see things come from an idea to like actually like a finished product. And then you look at that span of what happened in between, you're like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the long and the short of it. So yeah, I'm a extremely passionate about deer hunting, the culture of deer hunting, the seeing that we do potentially a better job and going forward than what we've done over the last couple of years, and making it fun and trying to introduce new people into it and make it not so people aren't having fun with it. And I think a lot of times, just collectively as a group, hunters are competitive people, and sometimes you get overly competitive. It can take the fun out of something, and I think at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, what are you doing it for?
No doubt.
Right.
And we talked about some of that stuff, yesterday, as far as hunter recruitment and numbers being down, and the way the hunting culture has kind of shifted from it being a social aspect to being a almost selfish, as you said, competitive aspect, where it's still all about inches. And it is, for me, it is about inches, and that's
Right.
That's the honest truth. But
which I respect and appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say. I think there's a lot of people say a lot of things that are politically correct, and it's not really what they believe in. Like that's I'm not that way. Like I'm just not gonna do it. I've eaten tags over the last 3 or 4 years because of it, and it gets frustrating. But back to the culture shifting. That's something that we all need to be aware of and do a better job of, is hunter recruitment and making it fun. Everybody hunts for a different reason, right?
Right.
So the reason that I hunt doesn't necessarily need to be forced upon someone else or even a new hunter.
Right.
So I think enjoying it and having fun in those early years, like that's super, super important, and we're way out of touch with it.
I think we're getting back in tune with it with films like The Forest, The Hunting Public. That whole have fun aspect is kind of making a resurgence, thankfully, and it's through conscious efforts like folks like you.
You have to be conscious of it. The way that I kind of stepped back and looked at it, and the way we kind of framed this project and this film is, I always think in my head, like, no one drives past a nice new house and stops and looks at it and goes, man, look how nice that foundation is. No one ever cares about the foundation of the house.
It's true.
But it's the most important part.
Yeah.
You don't have a house without the foundation. And at the foundation of hunting, it needs to be fun. You need to come out of those woods feeling better than you did going in. And if you're caring about trying to reach goals that other people have set for themselves, or just ultra competitive, or you want to shoot the next big buck to be able to post on social media and get likes, you're really overlooking the opportunity of what's there to just go out. I mean, I'm thankful every time I get to step out of the truck and just go out in the woods, whether I see a deer or don't see a deer. Obviously, the intent is always to move forward and have goals to, be a better hunter, shoot bigger, older age class deer. No one's denying that, you should have those goals in front of you, but you shouldn't look past all the opportunity that is in front of you every day. And like I said, getting back to the foundation of it, if we're not having fun and we're not making it fun for other people, the whole thing's going to crumble,
No doubt.
Yeah.
So
with all things considered, how was your guys' 2018 year? I talked to you a little bit throughout the year, and I know you never dragged a camera in the timber before this year, right?
never.
So how was, considering all that, with the pressure of having a finished product at the end of the year of film, and having a different approach? And I also know you didn't hang any tree stands prior to the season, so I want to touch a little bit about that too. So all things considered, how was your year?
It brought me back down to like ground zero, and through this project too, like, I realized that this is an opportunity, just because it's put my mentality in check of like how difficult, like we're talking about hunter recruitment, how big of a thing is that for somebody that's never hunted or doesn't have experience to actually go forward and learn how to do it. So this year I felt like I was brought back to ground zero. I'd never hunted with a cameraman or a camera, and it like I was like, all right, I'm like completely new at this and have no idea what I'm doing, and I need to learn pretty quickly because we're making a film. And it just made me think and remember of how hard it is to take on something that you've never done before and learn it. And that, I think that's why it is hard sometimes to get people into this, is because there's a lot of work that goes into it. And this season just, man, it absolutely humbled me. We had to work so hard to get what we wanted. And I said before this season that someone else had asked me on a podcast, what were my goals? And I had to think about that. And the top one was to do this film and do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel great that we accomplished that. If you put my deer season down on paper in comparison to last year, you'd say, oh, that guy didn't have a great season, Last year I killed a couple nice bucks. Last year I killed 3 deer. This year I killed 1 deer. But I'll never forget what we went through this season and just how it, shaped me going forward and the way that I look at this whole thing collectively. Really, really eye-opening. And I have a much greater appreciation for anybody that goes into the woods and, produces film and photo content in the hunting industry. It's unbelievably difficult. And I also have a lot more appreciation and respect just for art in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like watching an artist work and bring something from a thought process to a finished product like this guy does is it's pretty nuts to see. Some people are artists, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm greatly appreciative of those people being able to see something in their head and bring it together and show that. And now I'm conscious of that too. Everything you look around at, even these banners and all, somebody had a thought and then they were actually able to make that happen. And I don't know if there's anything more complicated to do that with than a film. It's,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Multifaceted,
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And especially for you, Jorden, going into, the big woods of Upper Michigan, low deer densities, what was the stress levels like? Because ultimately you're trying to capture the moment, and not only tell a story but capture the moment, and and deliver that in a final product. What was the stress level like, and the work? You guys are going into some remote locations, lots of gear, tent camping.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like Kevin said, it was a very, very humbling experience. I as a hunter and as a producer, I learned a ton from Kevin. Kevin hunts on a whole nother level than I do. It was very impressive to watch him. But then again, I think I taught him some things because as a producer, I have to essentially see the deer before he does, because I have to get the pre-roll. I have to get the deer in frame. There's so much that I have to do before he even thinks about drawing the bow back or raising the gun. It's because you can't just show a film and be like, oh, boom, there's a deer, and then, oh, he's dead.
Right.
Right. There's a lot of work and thought process, and I have to be on my game because I have to think, what that deer is going to do, and I have to be prepared of any kind of situation. So, and then you tie in big woods and low deer density. Yeah, it was very stressful. But Kevin and I we have a strong friendship now because of it. We worked very well as a team. It was great. For the situations and everything that we encountered this year, it was crazy how it turned out. It really is. Because you watch other films and you watch a lot of TV shows, and it's constant deer content or elk content or whatever else. People are going to watch this film, and they're going to see a story of a family. They're going to see a story of a guy in his journey. They're going to see, a hunting camp and the experience of what's around a hunting camp. They're going to see a successful hunt. They're going to see the struggles. They're going to see emotion. So there's so much more than just deer content or whatever, animal content. So, because I was stressed about that. I'm not going to lie. I was like, do we need to see some deer?
Yeah.
I think I told you before the podcast, there was a time where we went 10 consecutive sits and didn't see a deer, and we're trying to produce a film in one season.
Right.
It's like, all right, we need to get this done.
It's good that we both have a sense of humor, very similar.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of joking around, you know, like, yeah, we're doing great, you know.
Yeah.
Got a lot of B-roll.
Yeah.
Tons of B-roll.
Well, and I caught some things too for myself as a producer, because it's like you sit in the tree that long. It's like, well, there's only so many shots of the leaves and B-roll I can take.
Yeah.
And how I created some scenes was like, I wish I could go back and reshoot a lot of things, but I don't, because it's like now we have the story of how like it is what it is. I mean, a lot of this is how it is. Like, there was no high-end production crew out there going in there days after reshooting Kevin, dragging the deer. We did everything. And the other thing is like, because he worked a full-time job, I was a store owner, so like that's, I mean, you know what it's like. You work so many hours, so we had to collaborate. Times we were going in the woods, we had to collaborate how we were doing this, and of course then we had to hunt. And so very, very thankful for how this all turned out.
Yeah, I had a thought in my head, like how this was all going to go, like what I wanted to do, and it didn't work out that way at all. And I'm thankful for that, because what actually did transpire and what we did capture is way better than what I had in my head.
You know, I think that there's something to watching a man go through trials, tribulations, struggles, whatever you want to call it, adversity, pay the price, watch the pain and the agony on their face, and then come out in triumph at the end, achieving their goals. Like that, to me, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and
it's a big deal.
I think if we're just talking about like putting out hunting content that hasn't been portrayed, I think a lot of people are a little nervous to how people are going to react to if you post a photo or a comment that you did wound a deer or you missed. Well, what are you, are you a bad hunter? Are you a bad archer? I mean, no one wants people to say bad things about them, but we all make mistakes, and like mistakes are so important that you share that and show that, because as long as you're conscious that you made it and why it happened, and then you go through a thought process and correct that so that you don't make that mistake. That's how we grow as individuals. It's so important to show that mistakes are great. They're important. You need to make them. You need to not remake them. And I just think often, because no one wants to be kind of looked down upon, or you want to be as good as that guy, that we don't share a lot of that stuff. And there's definitely some channels where people aren't shy about it and do that. But it's just really, it's really important. And we captured a lot of that, just the reality. And like he said, you know, we agreed when we set off to do this that we were going to do something that 95% of people that would watch it can relate to, because let's face it, this whole industry revolves around people that are going to work 40 to 60 hours a week, and then they get to maybe get out on the weekends, coordinate days off. It's a lot different than, you know, like being a professional hunter or a pro staffer, where you're potentially getting compensation for investing time in doing it. And real quickly, I think people can lose sight of what the reality of this is for most people. And so, like I said, talking about the foundation, you know, it kind of wanted to bring it back and do something where pretty much anybody that watches this is going to be able to relate to the reality of it. So,
yeah, I mean, we've seen this project come to life from behind the scenes, and we're excited to watch it tonight. As far as I know, when you guys were developing this film, you guys, I think Memorial Day weekend, you guys went up and hung cameras. Throughout that whole journey, knowing that you guys are trying to put together a film, what did you learn through the cameras, or what maybe did you not learn while running cameras, you know, in a very dense timber area where obviously things aren't as constricted as the Midwest?
So I'm running currently around 10 cameras. From the first original camera that I bought from you guys, which was, and let's even go back just real quick. So I had half a dozen different trail cameras for years, and it was always just a pain. more work than reward, and just I was sick of throwing them in the garbage, and I've never bought a scratch off in my life. Like, I'm pretty conservative about my money. I do not like to waste my money. So throwing stuff in the garbage a year after you buy it, I gave up on cameras. Just for probably 4 or 5 years, I didn't run any until I came across you guys and the 5-year warranty thing. I was like, well, that makes sense. If I know I'm getting 5 years out of it, like, no questions asked, guaranteed, then it's worth it for me. And so that whole warranty thing made me revisit, and then I started really getting into them, and to where, like I said, I'm running like 10 cameras now, right? And so I'll say this year I learned a lot. I was a little overzealous in the, I was out there in March when there was still ice on the ground, hanging cameras with the anticipation that they're going to be up all year. This year, I probably won't go out. I might put some cameras up in the spring just to get some, like, turkey content. But for deer hunting, I probably won't hang cameras until August. One thing I definitely learned, that when you're hanging a camera that you intend on leaving for a year and collecting data, when you hang that camera in March, the landscape's clear, free, open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then you go get that camera at the end of the year. Yeah, and there's a big, tree grew right in front of it, or especially up north, there's ferns, which really, I think maybe you and I talked about that. As the sun comes up during the day, it really greatly changes the temperature of those things, and then you get a little bit of a breeze, and you'll get a lot of false triggers. There's just no way around it. And the other thing is, up there when the ferns get so tall, a lot of times I think I'd have a false trigger, and I'd be going back through and I'd blow the image up, and there's one little horn sticking up out of the ferns. The ferns are taller than the deer.
Yeah.
And so, one thing that I'll be conscious of going forward is that when you leave a camera for a long period of time, you have to be paying attention to what the vegetation is going to look like over the summer and into the fall. I don't think there's any denying that time in the field with the cameras is rough on them, right? If they're sitting in a house on the shelf with no batteries in them, they're going to last longer than if they're out in the field.
Yeah.
And you're putting an electronic device out in the environment. At some point, it's going to fail. That's just the way it goes. So I don't know that I'm going to subject them to that kind of abuse going forward. And I don't think I gained anything by getting them out there that early. I'll probably run my cameras from going forward, from August through to January.
Now, with, going through the seasons, spring, summer, fall, you said you had planned to hang those cameras and leave them up in those locations, for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see specific deer movement change as the season changed there? Because I've never been in the UP, never been, I'm familiar with big woods and, low structure,
Mm-hmm.
where there's not a lot of, I guess, diversity and different habitat structure. Were you placing those cameras, I guess, two things. One, did you notice any difference in movement throughout the year, as the seasons changed? And camera locations, were you placing them in terrain features as far as, like,
Mm-hmm.
funnels, pinch point saddles, high areas of elevation where there was obviously swamp ground, things like that?
Yeah, terrain features that are pinching travel. Up there can be tough because we have an elk herd. So a lot of times you see a trail that you're like, oh, man, this is really, like, there's a lot of deer coming through here.
Oh, yeah.
And it might be 3 or 4 elk a week, and they'll make it look like a dirt bike path, and the deer aren't using that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about where to not place cameras. And, yeah, when you get into, like, the section of forest in particular that we shot the film in is 100,000 acres.
It's huge.
So even with 10 cameras, you're not barely scratching the surface. So I'll say that I learned definitely some places where I won't hang cameras again. One thing that I definitely am super conscious of going forward is, like, how recent is that data and how quickly does those travel patterns change? So we went and checked the camera, and I'm like, oh my God, like the last 3 weeks, like there's bucks in here every day, all day, right? We're going to kill a nice deer here. There's some nice bucks too, like some older bucks coming through here. That's like the end of October to like November 15th, pre-rut, right? Deer are cruising. Well, we get in there like November 15th, we don't see any deer. And I'm like, why? What's going on? And last week's data is good for that week next year. It's no good for this week.
Yeah.
It changes week by week. And especially up there where these deer just, they can go wherever they want. There's no, like, just food to bedding travel. I mean, there is for a week at a time, and then they consume that food source, and then there's something else that could be 7 miles away that they prefer. And so you really have to be conscious of, like, what I saw last week doesn't apply this week. I need to know what's going on. I need to know what's going on now. But moving forward, like, that data next year, I know where I'm going to kill a nice buck next year.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel pretty confident in saying that.
We talk about that a ton, is the annual trail camera data and, like, the 365 pattern year over year over year. And as you build data logs, whether it's a specific deer doing the same thing or a specific area that's hot, you know, within the, you know, that same time frame. And that's considering all outside influences being equal, right? So pressure, food, habitat. But in the big woods, a lot of that stuff is less likely to change versus hunting a 40-acre parcel in, you know,
or
in
they can
Illinois.
change the crops.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Neighbor
absolutely.
cells, yeah, the forest is a lot more pristine, like it really is. I mean, from top to bottom.
Oh, it was a huge eye-opener for me just watching it, like, because, I mean, it was a perfect example. It was late December, and Kevin pulled cameras and was like, dude, we're going to kill a deer this weekend. And we didn't see a deer at all. It's like, all right, we're doing good.
Confidence has never been high.
Yeah. But like you said, the data log, I mean, at least, you know then, like, you can go back in the late season during that week and fingers crossed see a deer.
They're so valuable. Like, yeah, they might not help you kill a deer that week.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you start running a decent amount of cameras, and you're not just looking at the pictures. You're
Asking
taking the
why.
data and processing it, and especially with video content. Like, I don't know if people realize how valuable that is versus just a still image to actually see how these deer are moving through, what, you know, how they are interacting with one another is super interesting. I've got a lot out of the audio of being able to hear how these deer vocalize with one another, because they're pretty sensitive to that. From area to area, deer sound different. They do different vocalizations, and I think they're pretty in tune and pretty sensitive about, like, if you blow a grunt call and it doesn't sound like what the deer sound like around there, they're pretty savvy to that. And I'm big on calling deer up there because, a lot of times you can't see but 30 or 40 yards, and you could have a deer walking 50, 60 yards. In some situations, you could have a deer walk by you at, like we did, 35 yards.
No idea.
You can just see feet coming through,
Big
you know what I
buck,
mean?
too.
And you need to be able to, you got to have something in your arsenal where you can bring those deer within range. And for me, to be able to hear how those, you know, you got a doe come through the camera turns on, she's standing there in frame, then you hear, Matt, you know, and this buck comes through and he's chasing her around, and hear how he actually is vocalizing to her when he's chasing her. And then if you can replicate that, called a lot of deer in.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting because I don't think that.
I've never thought of that.
Well, I've never thought of that either, and I don't think, you know, we talk about video, and we've had guests on that talk about video and the extra data that you gather about a deer's personality, but no one has gone that deep into the audio portion and the information that provides, because most people are thinking about, you know, the visual data that they're getting. It's a pretty interesting perspective on that.
Yeah, and I like to call deer, and you can ask him.
Oh,
man,
dude.
I like.
He's got a grunt call that sounds really good. Like, he's got it perfected. Well, how many?
What is it?
It's a It's made up of 3 grunt calls and some plumbing parts.
So you made it's a home rig.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a home brew.
Yeah.
And
you'll hear it in the film.
Nothing sounds like
yeah.
it. And that's the only thing that I could ever get to sound like what the deer sound like up there. Like so many of them are like tinny and plasticky.
Yeah.
And
is there a reed in it?
yeah, there's a reed in it.
So you took 3.
I took parts from 3 different grunt calls as well as some plumbing parts out of my service van.
Can you talk about that a little bit, or is that like
yeah, no,
secret,
I mean
Secret Service stuff?
There used to have this grunt call, and the body of it is a old True Talker. I don't know who even made H&S calls
Yeah,
or
probably
something.
H&S.
And then they had that call for years, and then they changed it and they went to a plastic, an all plastic housing. And I bought that one because my old one, the reed inside had broken, the bands in it had broken. You have the reed, and then you have what the reed rides on. And all that. The original one was like wood, and just from the moisture of breathing in it and whatever, it got all nasty. And so I got the new one, and I was like, oh man, it doesn't sound like the old one. You know what I mean? So I used parts from a couple different grunt calls and got stuff to fit in the old body. And then I needed like some different O-rings, and I'm like, sweet, I have an O-ring kit on my plumbing truck, So got some faucet O-rings and just got this thing all tuned in and tweaked, and it's like a custom deal. And I've had some companies send me some nice, expensive, handmade grunt calls. Man, it's unfortunate. They look really pretty, but the deer are going the other way when they hear that thing, dude. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. And every deer is different, too.
Yeah.
You can talk to them and watch, how they react to it. And a lot of time, every time, like, I have a little buck in, I want to see how they react to. But 1.5-year-old deer, 2.5-year-old deer, if you're blowing a tending grunt up there and they're within earshot of it, they're coming.
Yep.
They're coming right on the line, coming right to it. The older age class deer, there's not that many of them up there, so I can't really say. I've had one real interesting interaction with one up there a couple years ago, and I actually heard the roar that people talk about and what some of those calls do. And I had a little buck come up on a big deer that was bedded, and unfortunately he bedded on the opposite side of a pine tree, and I couldn't kill him. And he was probably 130-inch plus older, mature deer. And when this little buck came across him where he was bedded, he got up and smashed his horns and did that like so loud to where his vocal cords broke up, and he chased that other buck off. And I was like, whoa, yeah. Like, I thought that was a myth. Like,
That's
I guess the
crazy.
deer around here do that too. So there's a lot of 1.5 and 2.5-year-old bucks up there, and through the running the cameras and timing the stand, I've been able to replicate that and build my own little custom call that.
Do you think that they're more responsive? It's because it sounds like in areas that I hunt that are maybe there's little. I'm not saying the areas that I hunt have more pressure than Michigan, because that's probably not the case. But the public ground that we hunt in Ohio does get a lot of pressure. And a lot of times, my personal opinion is that deer there are less responsive to vocalizations. Do you think that they're more responsive there because the deer density is so low?
I think it's the
Do you
deer.
think that's part of it?
I think it's the deer density. I think it's the density of the cover up there. Those deer could be 10 yards away from each other in some circumstances and not know they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have to be vocal to communicate and know what's going on. It's so thick.
Yeah.
I mean, literally some of the areas that we're hunting, if you were to stick your hand out full length, your arm out in front of your face, you can't see your hand. I mean, the vegetation is just crazy thick.
The first time I went up there and we filmed for our scouting portion, he took me through the frickin' jungle. Like, it was like, and we're going to hunt through this stuff? As a producer, I'm thinking, the deer's going to be right there, and it's going to, but it's crazy. It's thick, but it's, so like Kevin says, like, the deer have to use their vocalizations to communicate a little bit more, because I hear all the time, like, especially does. Doe are always doing the tending grunts. I've heard the buck snort wheeze. I've heard that, like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, young deer, like little button bucks up there in the rut, they're just walking around. Meh, meh.
Oh yeah.
You hear them before you see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very vocal up there, and I've had a ton of success just blind calling, as well as seeing deer and being able to turn them. And
Mm-hmm.
So does that, like, the first thing that pops in my mind, hunting in that scenario where you can hear, the audible noise and not see a deer, like, does that increase the odds of, like, spot and stock opportunities in areas like that?
it's so thick and tough to move around quietly up there. It'd be pretty difficult unless you have like the right weather conditions
Right.
to do that. But one thing that definitely does happen pretty frequently is you'll be sitting there and you'll hear meh, and you're like, all right, there's a deer around. I need to start paying attention and looking. And when I sit, I almost like go into a coma, man. Like I can sit for 3 or 4 hours and just not move.
It's impressive
Oh, man.
because I'm like, because I'm a camera guy, so I'm always looking and moving around. He's like, yeah, because I asked him, I said, do I move around? He's like, yeah, you move a fair amount. And this guy's like stiff as a board in the tree, bow in the hand, like locked on, ready to rock.
I'm the opposite, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just kicked back, like, chill, looking around. Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like that too, but
Yeah.
when I'm sitting there and that's what I'm doing. I like when it gets quiet up there, you can hear for miles,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll hear that sometimes just coming through the woods. Meh, meh, and it's time. Like, hey, get paying attention, get clipped on.
Mm-hmm.
This could happen right now, and we're talking, these gaps that we're shooting through. 5 foot, 10 foot. I mean, he might come through that window that's 5 foot, and if he makes it through there and you don't shoot, that was your opportunity.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Not great for. Like I said, I had to learn how are we gonna make this work, because I've figured out over the years how to hunt that and kill deer in that manner, and it requires being ready. You know what I mean? But having a camera guy that needs to get content and footage, that's tough. So we had to learn on the fly, evolve, change our strategy, and in real time, like, within weeks, figure out. And, he was kind of touching on it, like I do things a little differently. I got my thing I go through when I see a deer, decide I'm going to shoot it. And I don't black out. I'm like super conscious of what I'm doing, but that never involved having to be thinking about what the other there's another person involved with this now, right? My system never involved another person. So like for me, it's like deer, pull, aim, kill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he called me off on a couple occasions where he said, hey, did you hear me say don't shoot? And I said, you said that? He said, I said it real loud the second time.
Yeah, I was
And
like,
dude,
Kevin, no. I mean, you'll see it. This
I'm
evening.
like,
We
I
have a-
never
we
heard
show it
you.
in the film.
I'm like, really? Like you said that? Like, and I don't space out, but like,
Just
I
in the
literally,
zone.
yeah, boom, like laser focus. And I through the season, I figured out how to change my system and become conscious that there's another part of this that's going on, and by the time we needed to, we had a system. And now going forward, I'm conscious now. Like when I see a deer, first thing I need to do is make sure he sees it, make sure we're communicating correctly. I mean, we got a system down. He's 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. You're staying 9 o'clock. And it was cool, and you'll hear it. You'll hear the audio of it through the couple different situations that we had through the film. But by the end of it, we got it together and got a system figured out. But yeah, had to kind of rewrite my programming of start to finish what happens when you from see a deer to kill a deer. So
I told him at one point, I said, I'm just going to have to hold on to your bow. And I said, when it's okay to shoot, I'll give it to you. Yeah.
There was a lot of jokes had at my expense around the camp and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, everybody thought it was pretty entertaining that but man,
But that's what I appreciated his ability. Because it taught me, like, to hone in.
Yeah.
Because he does. It's fun. It was fun to watch. It was a lot of fun.
It's like a cat, like when a bird lands on the windowsill, too. I'm just like, I want that thing so bad, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I kind of had to reprogram my brain to.
We talked a little bit about that last night, like as we were crashing at the hotel, like the difference in guys being able to flip a switch and go into not subconscious kill mode, but it's almost like you're going through, you call it a habit or a ritual, whatever word you used, process.
It's
system.
A conscious state that it doesn't involve anything besides the task at hand. And the task at hand is always, like I said, not involved another person. It's just me. I know what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where, you know, I've been doing it for 20-plus years. So, like, my brain has this neurological pathway that it knows to take. And it didn't involve those steps. And my brain, in the heat of the moment, even after it happened once, the second time, my brain just went right back in and, hey, you know what to do. And I had to be conscious of that, you know, as we moved on. I'm like, hey, if this is going to work out, you're going to have to make some changes here, dude. Like, I had to have some heart-to-hearts with myself walking around the woods. Come on, buddy, you know, you got to get it together here, you know.
So
don't let this guy down.
Did that come from Jorden a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, you know, after things happen and I look at him, you know, and he's like,
what the hell?
Oh, yeah, like the first, there's a situation we don't show in the film where it's at that point, and I'm guilty. I fell asleep in the tree, you know, but it's dark out, whatever, and I kind of wake up. I'm like, yeah, pretty sure, like, it's getting to that point where I need to get myself ready to get the camera ready and everything, and I get the nudge on the knee thinking, well, at that point, it's like, okay, there's a deer in the air, but I'm thinking, well, I got a job to do. I don't care if we bust the deer out or not. I'm here to film,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And you know, and then shoots and everything. And did you get it on film? Nope.
In my head, I'm like,
I didn't even know where the deer was at.
and you have to be so quiet up there.
It is.
Some of those mornings, if there's no wind, I mean, it's just dead quiet,
silent,
right?
Yeah.
And so we got this buck coming in, and I had heard it for a little bit. I didn't know he was, you know, dozing off or whatever. And in my head, he had heard it when I heard it. He's got the camera on. He's got a very nice camera. It can see better in the dark than I can. So in my head, I'm thinking, man, he's on this thing. He's got a little bit of B-roll, pre-roll, you know. And then he starts making some noise, you know. And I'm like, dude, you know, the buck is like 15 yards, you know. I'm like, and I'm like, I can't believe he's making noise. Like, and he tells me later, you know, I was trying to get the lens cap off, you know. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, we got so much here, like. And I shoot and I look back, you know, and he's like, yeah. You got it? He's like, no, I don't even have a lens cap off, man.
Yeah, it was like, in all, it was a great experience. And I think people will enjoy the story that we have.
I think for a lot of people that are kind of unfamiliar with the process of just filming a hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, self-filming, filming with another person, like, there's a lot of people that just are unaware of the added complexity to the situation.
Noise, movement.
Oh, yeah.
Yards, yeah.
Sense of heat. I mean, and then when you're camping, I mean, scent control kind of just goes right out the door.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Batteries, charging batteries, having all your batteries.
Weather.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know, we had one morning where we were confident that we were going to go into the spot and kill some deer, and it poured rain.
Yep.
And we're like, dude, we just can't do it to the equipment. You know what I mean? Like, I thought in my head that if I was just going out there hunting, I'd probably kill a deer this morning.
Right.
Well, we can't go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, like I said, it was a humbling season. It kind of brought me back to, like, you know, as you get older and older, you take on less, like, new endeavors, right? I mean, a lot of that happens when you're younger and you're into your teens. And to take something on like this and have to learn a whole new thing, as I'm in my mid-30s, in a quick period of time, and have some pressure because people are invested in this project with us, was like, and this is the first time I did anything like this. So like, the last thing I want to do is look stupid. I want to be successful. Like, I'm a goal-driven person too, so learn on the fly, man. A lot of emotions flying through the whole thing, and just put it to the fire and learn. And I don't know, I feel pretty fortunate the way that everything just kind of fell in place and lined up. And I know going forward, we've already been talking like,
What's next?
Yeah, what's next? Next year is we each do our own thing, and I'm gonna hunt by myself, probably no cameras all year. And then at that point, I know I'll be chomping at the bit, because like he was talking about building a friendship, hunting builds like when you're in on a project with somebody, it builds a different kind of relationship. And then, being out in the woods and spending a bunch of time, like, we'd go hunting and we'd be kind of burned out. And then by the time I even pulled in the driveway back at home, I'd be texting him like, we're going back, and whatever. There was a couple times where a couple weeks would go by. I'm like, dude, like, can't wait to get up north with you, man, and like get in the stand. It was a real growing experience just as an individual, aside from the hunting thing. So,
well, the show is kicked off, and we better get back to work. But where can they find this film? I know it's premiering tonight, but what's the release look like that?
And then we're going to premiere it again in another theater in my hometown.
Cool.
And who knows? I mean, we might premiere it. We really don't know. I mean, we know we're going to have a digital download. We know we're going to have DVDs eventually. But tonight's kind of going to be the feel. This is our first project, so we wanted to know, like, if people like it.
Yeah.
Of course, as a producer, it's like, I pray that no one says this thing sucks. Which I don't think anyone will, but if they do, screw them, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
But, I mean, people will be able to find more information out either throughout the Deer Hunter podcast or through my media outlet, Suseworks Media.
Yep.
They can stay in touch.
a lot of people been asking like, hey, we can't make it to the premiere. We're out of state. When can we see it? And I've just said, I wish that I had that information for you, but it's taken every ounce of energy we've had to be focused on getting to this point today.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to look ahead, and but we do know, once we get through this, we're gonna realign, how we're focusing our efforts, and we want to get this into a couple different formats so that people can get it DVD, potentially a Blu-ray, and then a 4K download. So, deerhunterpodcast.com will have links, and if you're signed up on the newsletter, like once all that information's out, it'll be available for purchase, through online. And then we've talked about some film tours and some stuff, so not exactly certain yet, but we know we want to put it out in every format possible so that people can get it and enjoy it.
Cool. We will link to all that on YouTube and the description of the podcast. So we appreciate you guys getting in here early this morning and sitting down and talking a little bit about the project, and we look forward to seeing it tonight as well.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
guys.
this was fun. I wish we had
more
time, but that's just people been walking by the booth. You can see Chad kind of like, I could have probably need
two
to
different directions.
Right, exactly. So get to work.
We'll have to do it again sometime in the near future.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.